Number one mistake comes down to the location itself. No matter what your experience is, no matter what brand you're in, it's that actual location, the one you decide on.
Location, location, location. So everybody says that.
Even if you have the best location, if there's financial struggles because there's lack of education or understanding of overall business acumen, it typically leads to a closure, and that's why majority of restaurants fell in the first year.
Today we're going to talk about the top 10 mistakes made in the restaurant space by restaurateurs. We believe these information will be super valuable. We have an amazing guest today, so we'll let him start with the first 5 topics, and then we'll do a follow-up episode on the next 5, and then we'll probably do a deep dive into some of these topics because there's a lot to be discussed. So without further ado, our guest today is Kendall Ware. He is currently the COO of Walk-Ons. He's led small brands to really large brands, running a $2.2 billion P&L statement and having thousands of employees. Kendall, welcome to the pod, and let's get into this. So top 10 mistakes, we're gonna focus on the first 5. What's the number one mistake not to be made when you're opening a new restaurant, or if you're an existing restaurant opening a new location?
Yeah, the number one mistake comes down to the location itself. Right, and that's the most common one that we see. No matter what your experience is, no matter what brand you're in, it's that actual location, the one you decide on. And unfortunately, in a lot of cases, people are making decisions based upon personal reasons or personal preferences.
So it's closer to my house. It's closer to, yeah. Right. Okay, gotcha.
It's a 5-mile radius. I can get there easily. You know, my grandmother grew up on this street. There's some sort of tie that connects them to a location, so they get really hung up on it and they really want to get that location. And they're not paying as much attention to what the actual rent's going to be, what triple net is, what the maintenance is going to look like. Is there any support from landlords? Is there not? Is there proper ingress and egress where people can actually get into the location easily? Or are they having to go down several stoplights, do U-turns? Like, there's a lot of factors that go into it. And in a lot of cases, people just care about the site and they're not looking at the long term of it. But when you dive into it, there's a lot of locations where it's poor visibility, and it's the visibility to things that matter. Sure, on average, most buildings are visible, but is your signage visible? And is there restrictions in the lease that prevent you from having your logo in a certain area, a certain spot? Are there trees that can't be cut down that are blocking every sign that you have? And there's so many of these things that happen so often just because people aren't paying attention to them, or they don't know what to look for.
Yeah, location, location, location. So everybody says that. And it's funny because we had somebody from Florida yesterday that they said, look, we're getting blocked out of locations by Starbucks, by XYZ, etc. I guess that's another thing that goes into that metric of, hey, we can't be here, so what do? They go to a B location.
Right. And sometimes that might be okay, depending upon what the concept is, but also what your performer is in the business. Because a lot of times people are going after a certain rent number, but not really understanding what it's going to look like on their business. And if you're opening a new restaurant and it's not a franchise, and you don't know what to expect, and you're going off of pure gut and what you've learned about the community, you could be off. And if you're off, then that rent may not work for you. Or it's on the flip side, people are looking to find the cheapest rent imaginable, and that usually puts you in a tough bind as well.
Save money
on the front end, right? So I think there's so much to unpack there, and I think we'll do a whole follow-up episode on everything that goes into the selection side. But it's usually poor visibility, poor selection overall, and then just the lack of understanding how this location is actually going to perform in that local area. Because it might be something you're familiar with, but how many households are there? What demographic do you actually serve? What kind of people want to engage with your restaurant, and are they living in that area? What's the median income for someone who's going to dine at a restaurant like yours? There's so many factors. So I would just recommend going with professionals who do this for a living, understand all the demographics, psychographics, everything that goes into it before making that decision.
Yeah, makes sense. And also, I guess, concentration in a specific geographical market.
Right.
Because if you have one and the other one is 20 miles away, it may not make sense because you just don't get that whole penetration into the market. So just kind of breaking up the locations in like a perfect air.
And people like to rush it sometimes, right? I know a person who locked themselves into $95,000 a month rent. And I don't care what business you have, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, that's crazy. 100,000, so that's 1.2 million
Right.
a year in rent.
Right. And
so that means you got to do a minimum like 3 million out of that building just to probably
if
pay
not
rent.
More. Yeah. So it's just people make decisions because they're just not clear or they don't understand this. And people all the time are focusing on elements that might fit the concept idea, like, oh, it has a patio, or it's this, or it's that. And sometimes you got to sacrifice some of those things if it's not the right deal. But you have to understand first your brand, what the community has done so far. Is this a second generation space or is it not? Are you doing a ground up? Are you converting a shut down restaurant? A lot of factors to consider.
Yeah, because opening a new restaurant first generation is usually very expensive.
Yeah, and you're taking all the risk.
Yeah, and second generation will be much, much cheaper, but
there's a reason why it closed.
Yeah, why it closed. Yeah, I was about to say that.
So you got to figure out the balance. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. All right, so we definitely have to drill into this because there's so much to unpack there, from rent, triple nets, rent increases to actual location sites and everything that you talked about, the TIs, picking the right selection stuff, all that jazz. So we'll definitely do a whole episode around locations. Yep. Poor management of finances. So that's the second one. So give us a little bit of an overview of that. So managing finances is obviously critical because if you don't know what's going out, then that would be really tough. But let's get into the finances. What do you mean by poor management of finances? Give me some examples so I can better understand that topic.
This is usually the make or break point, right? Even if you have the best location, if there's financial struggles because there's lack of education or understanding of overall business acumen, it typically leads to a closure, and that's why majority of restaurants fell in the first year, right? And the most common is just not understanding what the metrics are, how to calculate them, and what to look for.
Let's get into some of those metrics. So tell me like the number one metrics on the top of the chain. Like you gotta really understand this metric.
You could argue any point. I would say just having a close understanding of your food costs, your labor costs, anything else that's controllable by you that you truly can impact, and measuring it appropriately and frequently. The gap that I see, and this has been in my entire career, I used to think, oh, it's just the brand I was at, oh, this brand, there's an excuse why they're like this. But every brand I've been at so far, large or small, there's always been a group of people that truly did not understand the business acumen side of the business. Or would say things like, well, there's money in my bank account, so I'm probably doing okay. I don't do P&Ls. I had a guy just a couple weeks ago, we were trying to get him to do an annual business plan. And his response was, I've never even done a monthly business plan. How am I supposed to do an annual business plan?
Yeah.
So I think one, starting off with your plan. What are your metrics? What are your goals? What are you trying to accomplish? What is your original pro forma that helped you pick this site, right? It all goes back to the beginning, but what is that pro forma and how are you measuring against that? And does that pro forma, is it a great representation of your break even? Do you know what your break even is? That's a question that most people don't know.
Oh yeah, that's true. Because we just talked about location. So if you go add the rent up, then add 30% for food costs, 30% on top of that for labor, then you should have a pretty good understanding of, all right, what do I need to do to break even? So at least do the basics math. Right. You don't have to write a 25-page business document that may dynamically change, but at least know the bare bones of, I got to be between whatever, like that restaurant with $95,000 a month, they should know. All right, I got to plan on a $3 million restaurant. If not, then it's just not worth opening that. But and I think we have done a topic around how do we P&L, how to actually do the finances and how to figure out the food costs, all that stuff. So you guys can tune in for that episode as well. So.
And sometimes a lot of things aren't factored in because they're not knowing what to look for. Like they'll say their labor is 25%, but they're not accounting for insurance and benefits and tax. They're not, there's a lot of things that go into all this. And usually it's just not an understanding of where to start. So it's like start with your pro forma, of course. From there, have your break even truly identified, and then you're measuring it against a target at least. So am I doing well? Am I not? Do I need to focus here, focus there? But it's just a big gap. And I think franchisors, brands, leaders of organizations should be the responsible ones to offer additional education and training on all that, all the business aspect of this, because you just don't know what people know. Sure. And so I would recommend if you're a franchise or you're a larger brand, you're bringing in new restaurateurs, put them through some sort of test just to understand where they are. Do they understand the basics? Can they calculate food costs? That's the number one thing I get asked. What's the calculation for food costs? And sure, you could argue there's plenty of technology platforms today that can do it for you, and that's fine. But if you don't understand how you're getting to that number, it's hard for you to manage that appropriately. The number one challenge in all things financial is in the very beginning, and it's not anticipating the amount of capital you actually need post-opening. Most brands, most banks, most people usually go after the typical 3-month window where it's like, all right, get 3 months of additional capital to keep the business operating, and then by then you'll be cash flow positive and you don't have to worry about it. That's a fairy tale. And I have not met many people who've ever actually accomplished cash flow within 3 months of a restaurant. And so I don't know what the answer is. I think it's different based upon the needs and the size and all these factors, but 3 months is not enough. I know that. It should be 6, maybe 9 months. And the argument will be, oh, well, banks aren't familiar with that. I mean, you got to find a way. Unless it is a proven concept, you've already opened 4 of these, you proved it out over a 5-year span, and you're doing your 5th location, okay, maybe you got this under control, right? You have enough cash. But if it's your first restaurant, it's a new concept, nobody understands it, 3 months is not going to get you very far. So anticipating how much capital can you get your hands on to help you post-opening to ride that ship a little bit, whether you use it or not, at least you know it's there.
Sure. Yeah, and actually that's a great point because majority of these guys are opening and they're just slowly creeping up. That's 99%.
Yeah.
But the 1% who open, they get this huge lift from day one because they have awareness or they've got a great marketing team. So if you don't have that lined up, yeah, 3 months is nothing. It's just gonna come and go, and before you know it, it's like, oh, I'm out of cash. Yeah, agreed. 6 months. Better be safe on the safer side than take a risk, and now you're scrambling trying to make payroll, and
right.
You can't buy food, or because those are going to cover 60% of that cost.
That's right.
So let's drill down into operational management. What do you mean by operational management? So what does that entail?
So this gets into who's actually managing the business, right? And is there somebody working in the business, and is there somebody working on the business? Or are you that same person? And if you are, you have to manage your time appropriately. What happens is you get open, and most restaurateurs, restaurant owners, they get stuck in the weeds. One, because they feel like they have to, and most likely they have the experience, they know what to do to solve problems, and they're not yet comfortable delegating to their team and relying on their team. So they're jumping in every area of that restaurant trying to make it better, and they're also trying to keep up with finances and reporting and everything else. So it's defining your role first and foremost of what are you going to be to this restaurant, regardless of your ownership status. How are you going to function, and do you have the supportive team members available to assist you, right? Do you have a GM underneath you? If so, you split up responsibilities. If you are one and the same, you're the GM, the owner, and everything else, the accountant and all that, then you have to figure out what that week looks like for you. You mix that on top of just not knowing where their restaurant has the most value when it comes to the guest perspective. So meaning if I'm in a certain restaurant, some restaurants will say, oh, I know no matter what, if it's the worst shift I've ever had, as long as I run to the window where the food's being, delivered, and I double check quality before it hits the guest table, then I know we're gonna be okay.
Yeah.
Some might argue and say, I know if I just go to my host stand and I control the flow, my kitchen won't back up, my ticket times will stay controlled, I'll do friendly conversation, walk a little bit slower to get to the table. Like, everybody's going to be different, but it's going to be based upon the concept.
Yeah.
And if you don't know where your pain points are or where you should go to in the midst of a crisis, then that's going to be a problem when it actually happens.
Yeah, finding those bottlenecks. So actually that's funny because obviously I'm a business owner myself, so I've been guilty of that. I was in operation, I was in the weeds, and I was working in and on the business. And it's really difficult. But when you start off, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to go in, and you're going to have to get into the weeds, figure all the things out, figure out the problem areas, figure out the bottlenecks. So you could put solutions in place for those, and then hopefully slowly kind of migrate out. And like right now we have an infrastructure. We've got, obviously I'm not in a day-to-day operation per se, but kind of got out of that space.
Yeah.
But at least I have because I started there now, I have a pretty good understanding. So if a problem comes up, I can solve it and I can get to the bottom of it. So same applies. I mean, I always say running a restaurant is running a business.
Yeah.
It's no different. So you gotta treat it like a business. If you don't, then it'll be set up for failure. It can't be a hobby, it has to be a business.
Yeah. And this is the biggest debate probably from any business owner, period. But you should invest in the talent up front. if you know that you cannot do everything and you're worried about expenses up front, that's understandable. So you're probably going to cut back, but at least hire somebody to be your right-hand person, right? Anybody who I've met in the business who tried to open up by themselves, right? Whether it's a franchisee or local operator, they open up by themselves because they're worried about cash flow. They start operating 9 months, 10 months, maybe a year in, they realize I can't do this anymore. My work-life balance is off. My family's upset with me. I can't do that. And it's like, yeah, you needed somebody. Yeah. And then they get to that point after they go through a year or more. I got a guy I'm working with right now who's been doing this for 3 years, and he just now finally broke down and said, hey, I need a district manager. I have 3 restaurants. I've been trying to do this myself. But sometimes people aren't realizing how important this is until it's too late. Yeah. Just do it from the beginning. It's worth it. Invest up front, pay top of market, make sure you're getting the right people on board, and it's going to make your life and your startup experience much easier and higher rate of return.
It's a very difficult thing to do. I know. I've been there.
I know.
It's like, hey,
but look at all the cases. Look at all the...
It's one of those things where you're like, hey, I don't want to invest in this position. I don't need to invest another, whatever, 75 to 150,000. I'll just give a huge range, but I don't have to do this. I can save that money, but once you get over that hump and you hire that person and you put them in a position, you're like, oh my God, I should have done that like 3 years ago.
Everybody says that.
Everybody says that. And I think everybody makes that mistake.
I know.
I really like, I know I've made that mistake. You know, I've been told, hey, you should do this. Else I'm like, no, I'm going to save that $100,000 a year and I'll just keep running it. And then when I put that person in place, it's like, oh my God, why didn't I listen?
It pays for itself.
It does pay for itself. So I think making that is truly, and I think that's probably one of the number one investments you could make is have that right-hand man.
Yes.
Like I know I have one in my company and I don't know what I would do without him.
Right.
Right.
They pay for themselves over time.
And they're worth their weight in gold.
Right.
But it has to be the right person.
That's right. That's right.
If it's not the right person, it's just going to add. It shouldn't be somebody that adds to your stress. It should be like, hey, what are you dealing with today that I can take away from you?
Yeah.
And then have them kind of really take all that stress away from you and let you work on the business, not in the weeds.
Exactly. They need to help elevate you. And this gets more complex, and this is why the operational structure is so important. This gets more complex when there's other investors or operators involved. So let's say it's 2 brothers doing a business or a group of individuals. Now it gets pretty confusing if you don't have that clear line of, hey, this person does this person does that. So organizing those roles and responsibilities will also help the ownership group, but also those who are operating the business. Because a lot of times managers get frustrated and quit because, well, one owner said this, the investor said that, I don't really know what to do, it's always conflicting. So either way, the structure will keep everything organized and make sure you have the right roles and areas covered.
Amazing. Okay, so what's our next topic on this? So we've covered the first 3 and we're on a 4th one. What's the next mistake that's made in a restaurant space?
The next one is all about lack of systems and procedures, right? So not having things documented. And this is way more common than I think people realize. I was just presenting to a room of 80 people yesterday, okay? And I thought I was asking a rhetorical question. And I asked, hey, how many of you have a training program in place?
Yeah.
I was getting to a point. Sure. But when I saw no hands go up, I thought, oh, lack of engagement early in the morning, I'll try again. How many of you truly have a training program in place? Nobody had one. Yeah. Literally nobody. And so instead of me having a point to make, I now had to convert to an actual session about how to start building a training program and documenting standards and procedures. And after I spoke, many people came up to me, hey, where do I start? Like, should I just write it down? Should I open up a Word document? I'm like, okay, if this is where 80 restaurant brands are right now, regardless of their size and how long, then that is a good indicator of what's going on out there and just the lack of understanding of where to start and how to build this out. And you start to ask questions, it's like, oh, my mother ran this restaurant for 30 years. I'm taking over the business now. So I don't know where to start. She knew it all up here, and all the cooks and the servers, everyone's been there for the same amount of time. They were my mom's best friends or whatever. And you hear so many of these stories, and when you try to scale and open up the next location or you want to franchise, it's too hard. You don't know where to begin. There's nothing duplicatable about your brand yet because it's not documented. And since it hasn't been documented, you haven't worked through it on paper to figure out, is that the best process or not?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I can tell you that firsthand too. Like, we never had anything documented until like late 2019. And it was just a chaos because everybody would get trained differently. So if I called you, you would say something. If you called me, I would say something else, and it was just a mayhem. So I can attest to that. And we started aggressively documenting and getting all of our procedures written down. These are our, this is what we stand for. This is how we do things. This is how we treat customers. And it has been a game changer. And for though, again, we're gonna have to drill into this one because there's so much there. You got, we use a knowledge-based system within our platform that we document everything in. So I highly recommend, at least if you're not doing that, just get onto some sort of a knowledge base. Right. Create a series of categories, create a series of articles. Here's how you do things. Get on, there's a lot of video platforms. You could put them on YouTube. You don't want to make them public. Just put them on like Vimeo or something and record videos of, here's how you do this, here's how you do that. And that would be a great start. But then you should have a training system on top of that, that here's how you do everything. Now I'm testing you. Did you actually learn? Did you actually watch the video? Or were you on TikTok scrolling just like you are now?
A lot of these people are just nervous about releasing control. I know some owners who will go in every morning and make the sauce for the pizza because they don't want anybody to know the recipe, but they want to get to 20 locations. There's no way to scale that. So it's letting go of some of the control, but relying on how you document those standards for others to then replicate. And yes, do the videos. Do what's the most simple thing, right? Do it by position. Hey, what are the top 5 things that every position needs to know that are most important? Don't get into the weeds of here's the 100 things you got to do. Here's all 20 steps to effectively make a pizza. Just,
give me
simplify
the 5. Like
simplify.
if I'm a hostess, I got to greet people at night. I got to smile all the time. Like, give me 5 things that I got to
smile,
do.
walk at their pace. Stay, it's so easy if you break it down. But some people are like, oh, I'm not good at writing and typing. Fine, take out your phone. Right there. Give the message, right? And if that's what it is for you right now, that's okay. But just keep making that better and stronger over time.
And I agree on that recipe thing. Like, look, ideas are worthless. We're in a stage where ideas just don't mean anything. It's the execution that matters. So if you have an amazing idea, amazing joint, nobody knows anything about it, and you can't execute it, nobody knows about it, and it's gonna die off. But it's not the idea, is who's executing and who's actually delivering that and getting it to the finish line.
Yeah, and never think that your standards and procedures are ever done.
Yeah.
The more people that get exposed to them, the better, more efficient they're going to be, because someone's going to teach you that your 10-step process is actually a 5-step process.
Yeah.
Right? And as long as the end result's the same, you're maintaining your quality, that's all that matters. If people can get there faster without cutting corners and quantity or recipe, then something to consider.
I agree, and we've revised these many times. So it's a living, breathing system where it has to constantly change and it has to evolve. And again, things change, business changes. So those things have to evolve. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on. What's the next one?
So the 5th topic for today is inconsistent quality. And this is a big one that happens far too often, especially the bigger the restaurant gets or they start to become a chain. You start to see differences where people are calling you out frequently about what I got at this location versus what I got at the other location. And this comes back down to those systems and standards. If you don't have recipes documented, you don't know what certain hold times are, you don't know what all goes into making the best recipe that you have, then people are going to make mistakes and they're not going to know what to expect. So many restaurant brands don't even have like an image to show their team members, this is how the plate should look before it hits the table. This is what it's supposed to look like. That way you know if you're missing a side, a sauce, or if it's placed the right way, if it's missing a garnish. It's hard to keep up with that stuff. We're all humans. So there's got to be something in front of them that tells them this. But that quality piece, sometimes brands open up and they have something special about them. That's what got them to do the business. That's why they had 20 locations, what have you. But as pressures start to increase, right, the economy starts to add some additional pressure. Everyone's raising price. There's all these complaints. Traffic's down. People start to find ways to extract quality, thinking no one's going to realize, right? And I've been part of brands where it was all about stripping everything out and coming up with ingredients like analog cheese mixed with mozzarella. So it's real cheese, fake cheese, and you're blending it to save money. Like there's things that people do, and it reduces quality. And over time, it may not be the first week or first month, but people will catch on.
Yeah, that's a shady practice.
It's a shady practice.
Yeah.
If
that
anything,
is-
invest in the best of the best.
Of course.
And over time, people will realize this is high quality, and that drives frequency. But the quality piece and consistency overall, people think it doesn't matter, but guests are evaluating on this. They want to try to catch you. Oh, I went to this location and they gave me this. You didn't give me that. And so just, again, going back to the systems, that's where it starts. But from there, before you get too deep into your brand, identify what the non-negotiables are. What makes your brand so special? What is the one thing you're not going to sacrifice no matter what? And that doesn't mean you don't change the steps or have a better ingredient for you. But like, what is that product or what is the menu? And if there's non-negotiables on there, make that your top priority of how you're going to maintain that no matter what happens financially over the years.
Yeah, so there's actually a lot around a famous chicken sandwich place now started going, they were antibiotic free and now they're going to antibiotics. So it's like, oh, well then why am I coming here, right?
Yeah.
For me, I spend a lot of time on the food stuff, going after that quality, spending more money to get better food quality. And yeah, when that happens, I'm like, I'm out, like completely
It's
out.
got to be a simple menu, right? And it's got to be something that the average team member can execute, right? And if it's too complex, just start listening and take things off that menu. But if you want to, focus on consistency, start with those system standards, make sure that the recipe is as simplified as possible, right? And that you are empowering, but also providing the tools and resources to your team to be able to deliver whatever those standards are.
Providing the right tools at the hands of the right staff to ensure that they do their job. So that's my big motto is give the team the right tools to do their job so they can actually do their job.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. So these were the top 5. We'll do a follow-up episode after this and we'll drill into the next set of 5. I'm excited about these because I'm a consumer. I go to restaurants and I see these things across multiple locations. And back to the point that we made earlier, a room with 80 different restaurateurs and nobody has a set process or training program in place. So hopefully you guys took a lot of value out of this conversation and you're gonna start implementing some of these things in your restaurant so you can become better, you can grow and hopefully achieve the goals that you've set for yourself. Thank you for tuning in.